Okay, so let's talk about Chapter 1. Chapter 1 moves from just talking about quality logic and avoiding errors in logic, which was what we talked about in Chapter 10, to talking about specifically what is a strong argument and how do we build it. So this is based on your textbook Chapter 1 of Elements of Argument. Basically, what we are going to talk about is we're going to define argument, talk about the pieces of an argument, which we introduced in the last lesson. We're going to talk about the 3 different types of claims, and we're going to talk about the 2 different types of argument. Aristotelian argument and its elements, Rogerian argument and the important elements of creating a strong Rogerian argument, and then the Toulmin model, which is a way to help you analyze an argument. So, beginning at the beginning, an argument presents support for a claim on an issue, right? In the last presentation, we talked about how a issue for the sake of argument is one on which reasonable people can disagree. Reasonable people can have different claims on the same issue. And then to support that claim, you are going to use some kind of evidence, and you are going to use logic or reason. So that's what separates argument from persuasion. Persuasion is going to rely on emotion. Argument is going to rely on logic and reason. So, the parts of an argument. First up, the issue itself, the problem or controversy about which reasonable people may disagree. Then the claim, which is your position on the issue. The warrant, which we're going to talk in more depth about next week. The warrant links the claim in support, and the reason you don't see it on this slide is because the warrant is usually assumed, right? If you choose good quality support, logical reasons, and strong evidence, then it should be clear how that support backs up your claim. You shouldn't have to draw the connection or connect the dots for your readers. And then finally, an argument that is strong should have a refutation, right? So you present the opposing view on your issue, and then you explain how that is wrong or how yours is better. Because sometimes it's not necessarily that one side is right and one side is wrong. Sometimes it's one side is just more effective than the other, or one side is going to be able to be achieved faster than the other, or one side is going to positively affect more people than the other, right? So it's not necessarily about completely annihilating the other side, but just showing why they think what they do and why your side is better. All right, so now let's talk about different types of claims. The first is claim of fact. This is a simple statement that is either something that can be proven and verified by observation and research, or something that can be disproven. A claim of fact is either true or false. There's not much of an argument here. There's not really something about which reasonable people can disagree. For example, within 10 years, destruction of rainforests will cause hundreds of plant and animal species to become extinct. That is something that can be proven or disproven, not something that can be disagreed with by reasonable people. It's either fact, it's either accurate, or it's not. The impact of that, the importance of that, can be argued with, right? But as it's stated, this is a simple claim of fact. At the college level, you're more likely going to write either a claim of value or a claim of policy. So let's start with claim of value. Claim of value states that one thing or idea is better or somehow more desirable than another thing. So a claim of value puts some kind of higher value on one particular option. For example, requiring community service in high school will produce more community-aware graduates. This is something about which reasonable people can agree or disagree. They can agree or disagree with the value of that statement. Next up, claim of policy. Claim of policy suggests or argues that something should be done, that a particular solution should be implemented. So, for example, to reduce school violence, more gun and metal detectors should be installed in public schools. This is a claim that suggests a particular action, a particular policy. And it is something about which reasonable people might disagree. It's something that could be solved using other means, right? There are other ways that we can reduce school violence than just this one proposed solution, right? So there's your three types of claims: fact, value, and policy. All right, so now let's talk about different types of argument. For our purposes, we're going to talk about Aristotelian argument and Rogerian argument. Aristotelian argument is named after the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. That's why it has such a weird sound to it. Aristotle, Aristotelian. All right. Back in Aristotle's day, he kind of laid the foundation for thinking and speaking and writing logically. And so he developed this method for creating a strong argument for your point of view. And the goal is to balance ethos, pathos, and logos to create a solid argument that is free of errors in logic, that is free of those logical fallacies that we talked about. So first off, what are ethos, pathos, and logos? Logos is logic. That's where your logic, your reason, your evidence comes into play. Pathos, think pathetic, which is based on this same root word. Pathos pulls in emotions. All right? Emotions can be used sparingly in an effective argument. But remember, we by and large want to save that pathos, save that emotion for persuasion. And then finally, ethos. Your ethos is your ethics, your persona, your authority as an expert. The types of sources that you choose to use to support your claim, the type of experts that you choose to rely on, says a good bit about your ethos in an argument. So you want to make sure you present that as strongly, rationally, and fairly as possible. All right. So now that we've talked about the ancient Greek part, ethos, pathos, and logos, let's talk about the kind of structure or flow of an argument. Just like with any other essay, you're going to start by introducing your issue. You're going to tell us what the issue at hand is, when it's happening, where it's happening, who it's affecting, right? Basically the when, where, why, how. And then you're going to end your introductory paragraph with your thesis statement. All right? So set it up, the general issue, and then tell us what you want to do about it, what you value about it, what your policy is, what your value is, what is the claim that you're making about this issue. That way, by the end of your introduction, your readers know what they're going to be looking for in your body paragraphs. And in your body paragraphs, that's where you're going to present your case. You're going to give us the logic, the reason, the evidence for why we should do this, for why we should continue animal testing and medical research, or why we should discontinue animal testing and medical research. All right? You make your claim in your thesis statement, and then you prove it, you back it up, you support it, and you convince us logically in your body paragraphs. So that's where providing your proof comes in. You'll want to provide clear evidence that your side is the best side, using logic and avoiding logical fallacies. Use appeals to emotions only sparingly, if at all. Because again, this is not persuasion. We're not writing a TV ad or a radio ad. We're writing a research paper. And then the last thing you want to do before you wrap it up is you want to address the opposition. This is the refutation. Aristotle is the one who kind of started this trend. He said if you want to have an effective argument, you need to show that you understand what your opponents think, and then you need to present a fair, reasonable case for why your side is better. So it's not necessarily disproving the other side, but showing I acknowledge them, I understand where they're coming from, but here's why this way is better. Okay? Now you can do that in as little as one paragraph or as many as several paragraphs depending on the length of your essay and the depth of your argument. For the purposes of this class's research paper, it's 1,000 to 1,200 words, and you only need a paragraph to refute your opposition. All right? And then finally, present your conclusion. Pull it all together. Remind your readers of the main takeaways of your essay. What are the biggest, most compelling pieces of evidence that you presented? What are the key points in your argument? And then give them a call to action about what they can do to make this happen. Based on what they've just read, what should they do with it? What should they do about it? All right? So there is your outline of an Aristotelian argument. Any questions yet? Okay. So let's look at Rogerian Argument. This is based on the work of a psychologist in the 20th century named Carl Rogers. And based on his observations and his research, he came up with a different method to make an effective argument. And we call this the Rogerian Argument after Rogers. A Rogerian argument focuses more on finding a middle ground between the author and the audience. This can be especially effective when your intended audience is from a different group, when your intended audience is likely to have an opinion different from your own. Then finding middle ground with them is more likely to make them more receptive of what it is that you have to say. So it kind of makes sense that a psychologist came up with this approach, right? Because it's all about making that personal connection and finding common ground. So your first step is to understand your own biases, understand your own feelings and emotions tied to this issue, so that when you present your argument, you do it in a way that is not making any assumptions and is not throwing out any negativity at people who disagree with you. Because again, you're trying to find common ground. Okay? So with the Rogerian argument, you're going to start in the same way as you would any other essay, and you're going to introduce the problem. What's the issue? What's the who, what, when, where, why, and how? All right? And then you're going to acknowledge the other side. Wait, what? Did I say anything about a thesis yet? This is different, right? Because with a Rogerian argument, the first thing you want to do is establish what the problem is, acknowledge what other people think about it, and then you're going to give your thesis and carefully present your side. So you're going to start over there with the opposition, with the haters, and you're going to slowly pull them back over to your side. At least that's the goal, okay? So you're still using logic, you're still using evidence, but you're not doing it in a way that says straight from the beginning, I'm right, listen to me, this is why. Instead, you're coming at it from, hey buddy, I see ya, I hear ya, now this is what I think. And this is the stuff we have in common, right? We both want to fix this problem. So let me tell you how I think we could do that, right? So it's a different approach to making your claim. You're still choosing a position on the issue. You still have some kind of claim of policy or value that you're going to end with in your conclusion. But instead of standing on your soapbox from the beginning, you're going to slowly pull people up there with you. Does that make sense? So, two different methods to present the same argument. You're still avoiding emotion. You're still being fair, logical, and reasonable. You're still showing that you understand people who disagree, right? But in Aristotelian argument, you start with your point, you make your point, then you address the opposition and come back to recap your thoughts. With Rogerian argument, you introduce the problem, you talk about what other people think, and then you show how they have things in common with what you think and how what you think is best at the end of that same call to action, right? So it's just two approaches to the same thing. Now let's talk about the Toulmin Method. Stephen Toulmin was a philosopher, which is basically like a professional thinker. Like, I wish we could all get that gig. But he's the 20th century philosopher who studied the structure of successful arguments. And based on many successful arguments by many famous thinkers, he came up with this method for analyzing arguments. So how can we look at an argument independently and rationally, and what are the things that good arguments have in common? What structures do they follow? And so from that, we have the Toulmin Method, which is both a way to analyze an argument, but we can also kind of use it to reverse engineer our own arguments. We can use it as a way to write, not just as a way to read. Okay? So let's look at the bullet points here. Claims. The claim is a statement of opinion that the author is asking his or her audience to accept, right? It is your position on the issue. For example, there should be more laws to regulate texting while driving in order to cut down on dangerous car accidents. Wow, that's kind of dated now that Georgia's jumped on that bandwagon. All right, support. Support includes facts, data, and reasoning upon which the claim is based, essentially the evidence that makes the case for the claim. Example, the National Safety Council estimates that 1.6 million car accidents per year are caused by cell phone use and texting. The warrant is what links the claim and the support, right? We talked about that a little bit in the last lesson. So the warrant here that's connecting the support to the claim is that being distracted while texting while driving is dangerous and causes accidents. Makes sense, right? We don't necessarily have to state that for this support to match up with the claim. So a lot of times the warrants in an argument are not explicitly stated. They're just assumed or understood. All right? And then finally, the rebuttal. A strong argument is going to have some kind of refutation, or as Toulmin called it, a rebuttal. The rebuttal is when the author addresses the opposing views. This is going to either be done to preempt counter-arguments, and thus it makes the original argument look stronger because it shows that this is an informed author who is considered the opposition. So here's an example. Woo. Although police officers are busy already, making anti-texting laws a priority saves time, money, and lives. Local departments could add extra staff to address this important priority. So this gives a reason why people might disagree with adding a no texting while driving law, and it refutes that claim by saying, yes, it's going to put extra pressure on them, but it should also help prevent some of that pressure by preventing some of these wrecks. And if it's really a problem, they can hire extra staff because this is a life-saving priority, right? So, based on the Toulmin method, we would go through and we would examine the claim, the support, make sure that the warrant is valid and connects the support to the claim, and then make sure that the author has included a refutation, aka rebuttal, and that is logical and fair. Make sense? Okay, so here's your assignment for today. What I want you to do is practice writing your own argument. You're going to complete the following bullet points on your own sheet of paper. Don't get too caught up in trying to write something that's perfect. I'm just using this as a way to see how well you understand what we've talked about today, how comfortable you are with argument, and what, if anything, I need to review next week. All right? So you're not writing a whole essay. You're basically giving me a bullet point for what issue is interesting or important to you. What's your claim on that issue? In other words, what's your opinion? What's your claim of value or claim of policy on this issue? Why do you think what you do? What are your 2 or 3 main reasons why you have this particular claim on this issue? I don't want you to do any research. I'm not looking for expert opinion or specific facts or statistics. I'm just looking for some good logical reasons why your claim is valid. Then the warrant, remember that's the thing that connects your support to your claim. You can write this out if it is controversial or if it's unclear or if it's not obvious. But most of the time the warrant is so obvious and straightforward that we don't have to state it out loud. So you can leave that bullet point blank. You're welcome. And then I want to see the refutation, or as Toulmin called it in his Toulmin method, the rebuttal. So what do other people think? What's the other side of the issue? Why do reasonable people disagree with your claim? Remember, don't fall for the straw man fallacy here, okay? Don't make them look ridiculous or make them look weak, but be fair and reasonable. Why do they think what they do, and how is your opinion better? How is your claim more valid, okay? And then the last thing you're going to give me, and this is the only part that has to be a complete grammatically correct sentence, is a thesis statement. Your thesis statement needs to pull together your claim and your support, your main reasons why. You're not getting into the nitty-gritty statistics and evidence and expert opinion and all of that stuff. You're just giving us some good reasons why your claim makes sense. So you can use this kind of Mad Lib style thesis statement as a helpful guide to get started if you'd like to. You don't have to, but I'm putting it here in case you want to follow it. So here it is. Voters, school administrators, should or should not do something. This is your claim of policy. So administration should change the dress code, or voters should elect so-and-so for dog catcher because, and then give your 2 or 3 reasons why. Because she has lots of experience catching dogs and a veterinary degree, so you know she's going to take good care of them once she does catch them. Or because the dress code is outdated and it's not equal between genders. Whatever your reasons are to support your claim. And that's it. That's all you have to do to create a strong thesis. So before I cut you loose and you start grabbing your pencil and pen and paper and writing your own bullet points and thesis, let's look at an example together. This is an actual student example of this very assignment. Okay? Alright, this is an actual student example of this assignment. So You can use any school-appropriate issue except abortion, because that's a hot-button topic, and I would like for y'all to still like each other over the next 7 weeks, because we're stuck here together. We got to learn and work together, and that's a very emotional topic, so that's the only one that's off limits. All right, so pick an issue other than abortion or medical marijuana, because this is the example I'm giving you. Issue: medical marijuana. Claim: medicinal marijuana should be federally legalized. That is a logical claim of policy on an issue, but it's something about which reasonable people can still disagree. Support: there are many health benefits: reducing seizures, treating pain, decreasing inflammation. It's a good source of revenue for the government to help increase funds for education. It allows for regulation and oversight to make sure that it's safe for patients. I mean, after all, that way they're getting it from a doctor instead of their friendly neighborhood drug dealer. Anyway, so for warrants, it's understood or assumed by the audience that those benefits are good things for people, and that they are also directly related to the claim that because this will lead to good things, it should be legalized at the federal level so that more people have access to said good things. So in this case, the warrant can be left off and doesn't have to be stated explicitly. All right, refutation, aka rebuttal. Opponents may say that there aren't many studies that prove the benefits, but if it weren't a class 1 drug, then it would be legal to study, and then we would have more scientists study it, and we'd have more studies to prove or disprove how effective it is, and we could go from there. Another thing opponents may say is that marijuana is a gateway drug. But if it is legal medicinally, then that means that people will be getting it under the supervision of a doctor and not a drug dealer, and so it will reduce or remove that gateway drug effect. So in both cases, we are fairly dealing with our opponents. We are looking at why they think what they think, and then showing how that's either inaccurate or incorrect, or how our solution addresses that and makes it better. And then lastly, the student wrote a thesis statement. Medicinal marijuana should be legalized at the federal level because it has many health, revenue, and safety benefits. Combined the claim with the support into one grammatically correct, short, sweet, to the point sentence. So now that we've looked at an example, give it a try. Write your own argument. You're not writing a full essay. You're not writing a full paragraph. You can just give me short little sentence fragments if you want to tell me what issue is important to you, what your claim is on the issue, your reasons why, making sure that those reasons have a warrant that connects them back to your claim, either assumed or stated. Then you're going to deal with your opposition. And finally, give me a thesis statement, and you're welcome to use this example if you'd like. When you're done, turn it in to the substitute teacher, and I'll see you guys next week.